the Sonke Gender Justice Policy Development and Advocacy Specialist, Namuma Mulindi, joining us now for more. And Linda, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. Let's start with whether there is any shadow of doubt in your mind that the prosecutors here completely bungled this case, and if you and I agree, what hope is there that the victims will, at the end, get justice?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. It's a great question you're asking, and I believe this case has put a spotlight on what it means when the prosecution doesn't show up as we expect them to. First, it also shows the nature of the adversarial system that we have for criminal cases, in that, you know, the defense, the stronger your defense, the better it is, definitely. But it shows that the person who's got the stronger attorney is the one who's likely to win. It makes us now question on behalf of victims, you know, who victims, and should I say complainants, who all they have is the NPA. If your representative doesn't bring their A game to that moment, you really feel hopeless. And in this situation, even the prospects of appeal seem questionable. And we don't know whether the NPA will actually be able to take this forward. And yeah, in a nutshell, it just really puts the NPA in a difficult position, because it's the judge who actually comes up and slams the NPA for their failure.
I'd like for us to take a listen for a moment on some of what the judge had to say, which is part of this bungling I'm talking about by the NPA. Let's take a listen to this for a moment.
Witnesses in the instant matter were in contact with each other and discussed the case before charges were laid, but it was not disclosed to what extent. There's an additional problem that there had been a WhatsApp group where all the complainants were part of. Mazondi took the lead in complaining about the appointment of Advocate Serfontein as the prosecutor in the matter, proposing that Mr. Ntelwa remains. Furthermore, Mr. Ntelwa was the prosecutor who indicated that witnesses should be influenced to stick to their police statement. The case can be distinguished from the Nduna matter, where there were two robberies months apart with a similar modus operandi.
Ms. Mulindi, if you listen to just that part, you can tell that this prosecutor, either he had this victim's interest at heart by starting this WhatsApp group, but he knew that what he was doing was completely wrong in terms of the law. This former prosecutor, Nceba Ntelwa, do you think that it would satisfy the victims to hear from the NPA that people like him are actually being disciplined for bungling a case that has been 8 years in the making?
But we have to look at the intention of the survivors and the witnesses who came forward. It wasn't necessarily to go after the NPA. Their issue was justice in the light of what the victims had suffered. So definitely, it would be great to hold the NPA accountable for this bungling that has occurred. But this bungling has led to a failure for the ultimate goal, which was justice. So yes, even if you do punish this person with a dismissal or something of the sort, justice has still not been achieved for the victim, and that is the big issue.
Cheryl Zondi, who is one of the very first victims, or should we say witnesses, that came forward to testify, the understanding is that she just was crying uncontrollably outside court today. People like her, do you think that they still have confidence in the country's criminal justice system, or maybe we're being too strong or too hard on the NPA? This is just a blip. I don't know. What do you make of it? And should people like her still believe that the NPA, the criminal justice in the country, can serve them at the end of all of this?
Look, I wouldn't blame her if she doesn't trust the system any further. What I would hope, though, is that this puts a spotlight on the NPA and that they tighten their belts in how they address GBV. We already know gender-based violence is a scourge in South Africa. So we need the NPA to ensure that they have the best people for the job at all times, ensure that the people with the relevant skills, to match up with the advocate who's coming on the other side are appointed in cases like this. This case is not it wasn't an easy open and shut matter. The assault happened way before the matter was actually brought before the court. And you can imagine this is now a person who's going through this all over again, having to testify before the courts. The NPA should have been aware. It's not a case where you could just say that, all right, there was a weapon that was found, there was this. Everything wasn't easy. So they should have known the road ahead of them was going to be uphill in proving this case and brought their A game to the table. So I don't blame her if she doesn't trust the system, but my hope is this helps them tighten their belts, bring their best foot forward, especially on behalf of the complainants, because the complainants only have the NPA. They don't have options. So my hope is this brings another level of accountability and transformation of the NPA.
Can the victims honestly expect that this case can be revived if talk of immigration and the possible deportation of the main person who is being accused here, and that is Timothy Omotoso, if he does go to his home country of Nigeria, do you think there's ever hope that he will make it back to South Africa?
Wow, there's different aspects of law that are involved here, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not necessarily an aspect on every angle to it. But if the NPA is to appeal, then they would have to act quickly to ensure then that they can put a stop to Omotoso's leaving. If he does leave, then you'd have to see, is there an extradition agreement between us and his home country before he can be brought back for trial? So it brings in a whole other complication going forward.
Yeah, and we know that complication with a case that has also been in the media, and that is that of Shepherd Bushiri. Before I let you go, one final question. Would it be too big an expectation to have the head of the NPA actually come out and address this bungling? Because that's what it is. It is a bungling. And I'm saying this on the strength of the very fact that you mentioned during our conversation, and that is that GBVF is a huge problem in our country, and that's why the president has declared it the #1 pandemic after COVID-19. Would it be too big an expectation for Shamila Batoyi to come out and address this, and how she's going to not only deal with the possible taking or reviving this case, but deal with people like Ncebantelwa, the former prosecutor?
It's important that she comes out and addresses it. It's important that we are also enabled to understand the person who was appointed as the prosecutor, were they the best qualified to take on this matter in the light of the facts that were presented before the court? It's important for her to come and speak to that.
Thank you very much for your time tonight. Sonke Gender Justice Policy Development and Advocacy Specialist, Namuma Mulindi.